If you see somebody that is kind, somebody that is generous, it's not because the person can speak the local language. It's not because of the local language, that's why the person is kind, that's why the person is generous. No. We're not saying it's not good to speak your local language, but it's not the only criteria for you to judge somebody's status and now start to demean and talk down on the person because the person cannot speak the language. Now, as I've said, there are a number of things that affect how someone's ability to speak a language. So I looked up this in ChatGPT. Factors that can influence how proficient you are in speaking a language or speaking a vernacular, or speaking in a particular language. 1, family and home environment. The language spoken at home, when you were born, where you grew up in, the household where you grew up in, what is the language they speak? If your parents, your guardians, the people that are taking care of you when you were a young child growing up, if they speak a particular language, you are likely to know that language. If they make it like a policy, some families have that policy, when you get home, you must speak the vernacular, the local language. If they do that and the parents are speaking the language and the older ones are speaking the language, the child will pick it. So if a child grows up in a home where the language is being spoken, the child will pick it. But like the case of Chinenye, we see that she grew up in different places. The mother was not in the picture, and so they kept taking her from one of the father's aunt, father's sister to another place of the father's relation and all that. So that affected her ability to speak the language. The another thing is geographic location. It said that people who grow up in urban areas, right, and where they are exposed more to, like in Nigeria now, if you grow up in an urban area and you speak more of English with your peers and with your friends and all that, you may have some challenge in being able to speak the local language. But if you grow up in a rural area where most 90% of the people in that area speak the local language, you are likely to speak that language. Then if you grow up outside your region, let's say like in this instance, you are Igbo, right? From the southeast, but you grew up in the north, or you grew up in the west, or you grew up outside the country in a place where not everyone speaks that language. You understand? Then it can be more difficult for you to pick the language. Another thing is schooling and education. There's what they call language of learning versus language of communication. The language of communication is the language you use everyday conversation. Like if you are in the north, the language of communication is Hausa. Now, but language of learning is the language spoken in school. So the language spoken in nursery, primary, secondary, university. And in Nigeria, the language of learning is usually English. So if you are in your language of communication is less, for example, Hausa or Yoruba or Igbo, right? But when you get to school, the language of learning, the language that is used to teach you is English. And so what happens is that if the language of learning is different from the language that is used in other places, that can also influence how the person speaks. If you like say Chinese now, you go to school and you are taught in Chinese, you go home and you speak Chinese, then definitely you speak the Chinese. You understand? Or you are from an Arab country and you are being taught in Arabic and you go home and you speak Arabic, But if it's just that you go to a school where you are taught one language and you go home, the another language is spoken and all of that, then it could affect the language that you speak. Then there are also peers and social influences. You understand? The language spoken by your friends, by the people you interact with on social occasions. When you go out, a young child go out to play, what language do they speak? You understand? You can see that children, maybe children, they are growing up in the north, they are Yorubas. When they go out to interact with their peers, their peers speak Hausa. So they are able to pick the language that their peers speak. Then another factor is media exposure. What language, when they are watching television, what language is used? If they are on the internet, what language is used? The music they listen to, what language is used? Social media, what language is used? So media exposure also influences the language a child speaks. So if, let's say now, the television, they speak English, and on radio is English, and all of that, it also influences the ability of that child to be able to speak the local language or local dialects. Then culture and parental attitude too. Some cultures, they prioritize your ability to speak the language. Then parents too. The parents can set rules at home. You must speak the local language and all that. That can also influence it. Migration too. If you leave your country and go to somewhere else, then individual interest and effort. You understand? Let's say you grew up in a place, you're not so exposed to the language of birth or to the vernacular or the local language of your parents. Then as an adult, you can choose to make an individual effort. If you have the interest and you say, okay, I am Igbo, I grew up in the West, I speak in Yoruba, or I grew up in the North, I speak Hausa more. But each time I interact with my Igbo brothers and sisters, they get offended that I can't speak the Igbo. I now decide on my own to make the effort to learn it. You understand? So somebody can make an individual effort. It can be difficult. Children learn languages easier. They find it easier to learn languages, but an adult can learn a new language if the adult puts a lot of effort, and is able to engage in the language, is exposed to media and other avenues where the language is spoken and stuff like that. Then another thing is that, there are areas of the brain that influences language. We have the Broca's area that's involved in speech production and grammar. It said that, following what ChatGPT said, people with stronger language skills tend to have a larger or more efficiently organized Broca's area in the brain. There's another area in the brain called Wernicke's area. It's for language comprehension and word recognition. So beta language learners may have more gray matter or more organized white matter in Wernicke's area, helping in faster word recognition and comprehension. Then there's a fiber that connects the Broca's area to the Wernicke's area. This one is called the arcuate fasciculus. It's a bundle of white matter that connects the Broca's and Wernicke's area. Say polyglots, which are people that can speak 4 languages or more. For gifted language learners, the connection tends to be stronger in this arcuate fasciculus, allowing for better integration of speech and comprehension. There is a gene called FOSP2 gene. It's called the language gene. That can also be important. So there are a number of things that can influence it. We have the biology factor, which I've just mentioned. Then you have the environment in which the person grew up and the level of interaction the person had with people that speak that language, and the media exposure the person has, the language spoken at school and all of that. ChatGPT, in the search I made, they concluded with this. The language we speak is shaped by where we were born, how we were raised, the schools we attended, the friends we had, and even the television we watched. It is not a sign of pride or shame. It's a result of environment. No one deserves to be ridiculed for that. I asked ChatGPT because personally, I have problem with language. Because growing up, let me not go about my tribe and all of that. But growing up, we speak a lot of pidgin English, then people, then we pick vernacular as time goes on. Then when you go to school, you try to learn good English. Me, I was more better in speaking pidgin than speaking the good English, but not so well in speaking vernacular, my local language. Then later, I went to school away from home. I was no longer as exposed to the language as I was when I was back at home. And then the little ones I could speak, it reduced. Then when I finished school, I went farther away from the place, and over time, I've had challenge with language. When I move to a new place, I find it difficult to speak the local language, and sometimes I have to use an interpreter, so as to be able to do my work better, So when it comes to, and some people have really criticized me for not being able to speak my language, and my people from home, they criticize me for not being able to speak my language from home. Then the environment where I now work now, I have colleagues who criticize me for not having spent some years where I am. They criticize me for not being able to speak the language where I am. So I face a lot of criticism from people who say you can't speak a vernacular language, you can't speak a local language. I speak more of pidgin. So I took this personal. When I saw this video from Chinenye and video from Erica, so when I was making my research, I asked ChatGPT that personally I have a problem of not being able to speak vernacular languages. And so in response, the ChatGPT response is trying to encourage me and all that. So that's why this one now is one of encouragement. And I said I want to talk about that. I told ChatGPT I want to speak about this, and then he gave me this nice quote, which I just read, which I will read again to conclude. The language we speak is shaped by where we were born, how we were raised, the schools we attended, the friends we had, and even the television we watched. It is not a sign of pride or shame. It's a result of environment. No one deserves to be ridiculed for that. I hope that those who watch this will get that message.